Hello, everybody. This is Dissonant Waves coming back at you with a new episode. Oh God, I always forget what number it is.
It's
18,
episode,
19, something like that.
yeah, it's episode 19. Today we are covering transgender dysphoria blues, and to celebrate transgender people, Trix isn't here.
Unfortunately, she is stuck in the boonies.
What about that irony? Man, I
I mean,
love myself some irony, but yeah, unfortunately Trix is not with us today. She is somewhere. I don't know. I'm not
cis people
too
talking
invested.
about this album is going to be interesting.
Yeah, two cis people talking about transgender. I'm gonna know absolutely everything about it and totally not seeing anything wrong.
500 Years we threw on there as well,
Hmm,
that single, or the B-side.
probably.
And after that, we got Of Montreal, Satanic Panic in the Attic.
And then to end it off, we have the two debuts. I'm just calling them both debuts for the sake of just for the sake of it, from Valent Soho.
It's the rare situation where I almost agree with him that the second is also their debut because they're pretty much the same album.
Yeah, it's
A lot of
so.
artists try to pretend that the second album's a debut, but like this
Simming,
one's okay. I get it.
Simming as we're talking about that, should we start off with the Valent Soho record? I know we're just jumping into it, but we'll start
Sure,
off.
because you're the one who's going to talk about it.
So, for those who don't really know much about Valent Soho's discography, back in 2008 they put out their actual debut called We Don't Belong Here, which is, and this is around the time where they didn't really have much following at all. I think they had just signed to an American label, and the EP that they put out before it, I think the story is that they literally had to sell their card to finance it.
In TV, yeah.
Yeah, and then they put out this album. It's a 30-minute kind of punk garage record. It's very garagey due to the low production that they have on this. Like, just they didn't have.
Grunge, very.
Yeah, it wasn't an intentional choice to have this low production. It's literally just what they could afford. And then eventually, as they got a bit more following, they could actually reproduce their self-titled in 2010, which kept 7 out of 10 tracks. Which the track listing has been mixed up besides Jesus Stole My Girlfriend and Son of Sam, which are the only two to stay in their same spot in the track listing.
The second
And
album also has more, but you're like bonus tracks.
yeah, well, that's the Australian version as well. Has the bonus tracks as well, but yeah, regardless, the point of the self-title is that it is a lot more higher produced. You definitely hear everything's got a lot more production quality into it, and it's a very interesting because there's not enough. A lot of bands that have that kind of debut and stuff like that, usually that's just stuff that is really deep and like real big deep cuts that you just don't see them touch ever again. And then their next debut is completely different tracks and everything like this. But this one, they've just fully re-recorded it, cut out a couple tracks, and then added a couple in place of them.
It's worth noting too that Bombs Over Broadway is on both of these and also was on their EP.
Which so far there isn't a version of Bombs Over Broadway that I haven't enjoyed. It's probably one of the better tracks off this whole three things, even if it is the one that's been used the most, and even if its lyrics are really generic anti fuck the system things. I mean, that's literally a lyric is fuck the
Yeah,
system. But
wrote it down somewhere.
but it's one of the funner tracks to listen to, and that's kind of the reason that I picked these ones. It's not to pick as much as Violent Soho is one of my favorite bands out of Australia and just of all time. This album wasn't chosen because I figured this is going to be the greatest albums of rock or anything, but more or less, I think it would be kind of great to talk about the differences between songs and track listings, blah blah blah. And I think we should do this kind
Quote.
of kind of comparing song by song in track listing here, because I think that's
I have a chart I wrote out for this too.
oh, let's hear the chart.
I'm gonna say I have the quote from the song. It's "Run away, fuck the system. It's all it is."
Yep, not lyrically strong, but I mean it's a fun tune to listen to, and the kind of context of what makes it fun, and a, a lot of a lot of it's kind of the same off these albums anyway, as that these are songs that are incredible to hear live.
Well,
This,
I'm sure they are.
yeah, understandably so though. This coming out and listening to the studio versions, they don't quite hit the same punch.
Is the first one closer?
The
It's a little more fuzzy and it has probably a little more of a live sound to it, I would imagine.
so I've only seen them play Bombers Over Broadway over like YouTube and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I haven't played it at any live set that I've gone to. But it is actually more closer to their self-titled.
Interesting. I mean, I guess because they probably have better production quality now, but
Yeah.
you probably saw them in like a big venue, right? I imagine.
Yeah, well, I originally saw them at the Enmore, which is a reasonable sized venue, but then I saw them at Lansdowne Hotel literally 2 weeks ago, which, for those who don't know what that is, that only holds 200 people or something like that. And
Yeah, I guess I'm curious what. Go on.
you literally had people like holding onto the pipes on the ceiling, about to tear the roof
They're
off.
showing pictures.
Yeah,
They were showing pictures. That was great.
yeah. It's again, you always have to separate a live act and a studio album because they can be two completely different experiences.
I'm curious what this would sound like in like a garage show kind of setting, because I feel like this would kill in like a
Oh,
really close, intimate setting.
I'm telling you right now, if you see them during a show at a very small venue, just go. It's fucking insane.
I can imagine. Yeah. That's the thing. I think like tonally, like this is interesting. Like it's interesting tonally, but like again, I have the same problem I had with Waco, which is that these are grunge albums. Cool. But like there's not a lot here that's very unique or specific.
Yeah, this isn't. It's admittedly, it's not the most unique sound, especially on these albums that were a little bit more. Uh, they were a little bit more wearing their inspirations on their sleeve.
I mean, inspiration or just like it's what that genre kind of is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of genres that didn't really go too far, and I mean, grunge never really had a huge time in the spotlight. It's when it was in the spotlight, it was in the spotlight, but you look at the time
So the
period
people
that,
in the spotlight.
yeah, but you look at the time period that grunge was really in the spotlight, and it's really just early 90s, and that's it.
And Kurt Cobain died. And
Yeah,
then that was it.
it still continued on for a bit, but then as it started to kind of die down, it got a bit more favor into I mean, grunge ended up evolving into alternative.
Like Foo Fighters went alternative, and you get stuff like Queens of the Stone Age out of that.
Mm.
Then like you get Nickelback, I think, is kind of an evolution of that sound as well. As much as people are loath to admit that.
How many people have you pissed off with that one statement?
In comparing where Nickelback started and when they started, it makes
Mm.
sense.
But I mean, to piss everyone else, I actually see where you're getting out of that.
I say like obscure and like outrageous stuff, like how Neutral Milk Hotel is kind of a ska band at points. Like when I hear Nickelback songs, I think of Kurt Cobain a little bit.
You have pissed off so many people with that statement. Even the people who will never hear that statement have now just become angry at you.
Well, I'm sorry, not really.
Anyway,
It's just like I can just imagine Kurt Cobain making a band like that eventually if Nirvana broke up.
let's get into a quick comparison of the tracks that are the same of these two albums. Then we'll go into the unique tracks. We won't spend too much on the songs that are the same because you know they're the same. So we'll start it off with the two songs that are in the same track listing, and it's a bit easier with Jesus Stole My Girlfriend and Son of Sam. Now, the version on We Don't Belong Here of Jesus Stole My Girlfriend is actually around 30 seconds shorter. There is a lot of different lyrics in it as well. personally, I don't think it actually works in a We Don't Belong Here version. I think it's a little bit too lo-fi, and I think it's re-recording and stuff. It truly benefited from that.
Would agree because it's mixed really weirdly, where the music is louder than the vocals, which is
Mm.
a style. But like with a song like this, you want to
Yeah, and one that's
kind of know what
supposed
the
to be,
point is.
yeah, that is so. Because what I've heard that the lyrics are about is about his girlfriend and kind of leaving him due to religious differences or to religion, stuff like that. And it's kind of him blaming Christianity. And I mean, there's a lot of anti-religious themes off here as well. There's a bit more to it, but it's definitely something that's supposed to be like you're supposed to hear the lyrics. It's a pretty personal kind of song off here. And when you can't really hear it and it's all kind of muffled and everything like that, it takes away a lot of what the song is supposed to offer. Plus, a lot of the other lyrics is in the original kind of just a bit feel like filler.
The original, like it's kind of all just lyrics. There's not a lot of like breaks or
Mm,
anything else. Whereas the redone version has like some little interludes and some
mm.
kind of measures of non-singing, which is small but like really noticeable when you compare them side by
Mm.
side.
Well, Jesus
Like they
Stole My
actually
Girlfriend is also
did
one
them.
of their most requested songs that they just rarely play. Because both times that I've gone to their concert, I've heard people yell out, play that song, and I've still yet to hear them play it. And they go through all their set lists and stuff. And in their American shows, I've seen them play it quite a couple times, but their Australian shows, I've only seen them play it at festivals and stuff like that. Just rarely see them play it here, which
I
might
think
go
the original
towards.
version,
Yeah, you go on first.
but there's something to appreciate about the original version that has like the kind of chugga chugga kind of real crunchy feel,
Hmm.
but in the redone version. But the redone version has more going on. Like it has like the intro to Son of Sam is like really good and
Hmm.
interesting. Kind of a trade off in that way.
Yeah, you feel in the redone version, the flow into Son of Sam kind of exists a bit more. And that's one of those ones where I actually
Well,
don't think there's too much difference in quality between the two versions. That and Bombs Over Broadway, I'd say, are the two songs that kind of don't really benefit or kind of get worse at each version. I think they kind of just stay the same, and they're pretty much the only two songs that stay untouched anyway.
again, I like hearing that the lyrics are like I like hearing them. Like it's like I know there are a lot of songs that they're not meant to hear the lyrics, and I appreciate that. But hearing them or not hearing them, usually, I like hearing them.
Hmm. Next one of the on the comparison ones that we're going to go to, because there's not much to talk about Son of Sam. It's a good track, but I mean, it is actually longer. Sorry, on the We Don't Belong Here version, but
Shorten it up quite a bit.
yeah, but like that, I was trying to think of everything as we go along here. And I probably do like the lo-fi version of Son of Sam a bit more because there are some songs that just work, especially in the style that they're going for. It works more in that garagey sound. Anyway, next one that we got to compare here is what I consider probably to be the worst song of both albums. Is the song "Muscle Junkie."
I think those fuck yous. I'll say that.
It's it has its place. If you were in a really angsty mood, and Lord knows I've been there, then this song is fun to listen to and shout along. But then when you grow up into your 20s, just start to realize that it's a little cringe.
I think this is the one I was comparing to like the song you would hear in like a high school movie from like 2001.
Yeah.
It would just be playing over the soundtrack as you like pan into like the bedroom or whatever, and the kid's just there singing along with "fuck you."
Yeah, I mean,
We gotta
uh,
let him know how he feels, man.
I know. I would say the worst song out of both of these albums in total is the We Don't Belong Here version, and it just feels off key. kind of just like it doesn't fit. It's so just and you hear it, and it's kind of hard to point out everything that feels off about it, but things just feel off, and they're kind of fixed in the redone version, but it's so it just wasn't really a good enough song to work with anyway. I Out of all the songs of We Don't Belong Here to Keep, I don't understand why they kept this one.
Way about Outsider, but sure, yeah. I mean, I
Outsider
do like
is an alright penultimate track in the
the
original version.
original, but they had a better penultimate. Well, I don't know if it's better, but they had a penultimate track in the new one, but they still kept Outsider anyway.
Yeah, well they pushed Bombs Over Broadway to be the penultimate because
I guess I'm counting Paper Planes.
yeah, Paper Planes
Paper
and
Plane.
Eat Your Parents. We'll talk about them later. They're bonus tracks, but anyway.
But finishing up Muscle Junkie, I do like the bass line. Yeah, those fuck you, like especially like the fuck yous. Every time I go back to them, they are like higher and different than I remember, are a little bit out of tune or out of pitch or whatever than you'd expect.
And since we're talking about it as well, we'll move on to Outsider, which is the out of the actual two bass albums, not including the bonus tracks, is the softest tracks. Again,
Yeah, it's uh,
I don't know why that one's kept as well. It worked all right on We Don't Belong Here, but it definitely as a middle track in the self-titled, it really slows it down for no reason. There's no like it's not like a build up into like a heavy track or kind of like a band switch to end. It's
kind
just
of just
kind
like
of there.
it's an acoustic track with strings.
Yeah. And even if say they put that as a bonus track as well, that would be fine. It's not like this didn't deserve to be re-recorded, and as a song, it's probably better re-recorded, seeming as something like that doesn't work so well garagey, but
Or
it
yeah,
also doesn't really fit with the album.
it was kind of that surprise. Like, really, they kept this? Okay, sure, whatever. Like, they must have some attachment to it. You said this is the other one that's kind of about religion, isn't it?
No, no, maybe. You know what? I'm gonna bring up the lyrics while you start talking a bit more about it. I don't
I,
think this one is too much about it's a I guess it's a bit looking at it, but I
like
don't know.
this
Yeah,
is like the song that I feel like a couple of these songs I feel like anybody could do. It's like the
yeah.
problem.
A lot of the as they've talked
It
about
crossed between your
recently, a
legs.
lot of their earlier stuff is a lot more personal and stuff like that, and I don't think they were too good at writing a lot of personal tracks compared to Hungry Ghost and Waco, which talks a lot more about like people around them and how they see the world and stuff like that, which is a little bit more intriguing. And there are some personal tracks here which the lyrics are kind of they've done really well. I mean Jesus Stole My Girlfriend, the actual self-titled one with the better lyrics, is actually pretty good lyrically.
It's interesting. It
Yeah.
has like an interesting idea. But like it's reading the Outsider lyrics is kind of like listening to them, where it's like,
Yeah.
is like what is it really about? Like, is it? It's kind of just frustrating to like stay with in a way because it just sounds generic and it like they're going for something with the lyrics that are just religion and purity and women and da 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 da.
Yeah, so to point out as well, both of the album arts are very similar. It's it's a kid with a crown of thorns around their head. The first
But the
one,
first one is better.
yeah, first one's the kid looks a lot more angry and angsty, while the second one is supposed to be a little bit more representation of a religious thing.
Grown up a little bit,
Yeah.
like the album kind of is.
So I mean, they are related albums completely. This isn't just like, oh, with Distance re-recorded, changed, and that. These are incredibly related, and they realize that they're related. It's no surprise about that.
Like the sketchy aesthetic where it looks like the kid in the first one is drawn as we don't belong here, and then the
Yeah,
other one's just like painterly, and that's cool. But man, that sketchiness is cool.
yeah. And I mean, Again, it has this huge kind of religious theme in it, with kind of. I'm not too sure about their kind of like experience of religion. I don't think they've ever actually talked too much about it, but they've definitely been quite heavily against institutionalized religions in their songs, and I'll go a bit more into that as we get into the bonus tracks. What else have we got? So, My Generation is another one of the continued on songs, which it's cheesy. It's supposed to be a song that's supposed to kind of really go catchy, and you kind of sing along, blah blah blah.
It was
It works
this
really
one I did not
well.
like much.
It works really well with the garage sound because it's supposed to be a kind of pop punk kind of thing, and it works well. But it doesn't really work well enough to catch. This is, I mean, back when I originally listened to this album back in high school and stuff like that, I thought My Generation was the weakest track off it. Now I see Muscle Junkie is, but it's not. It's not because My Generation has increased in quality. I think the We Don't Belong Here version actually goes out as a pretty average track and where the instrumentation works well, but not much else than that.
Plus, you have other songs talking about my generation, so it's like you just those lyrics are just in my mind whenever I think about the song.
And now quickly the last two tracks here to compare. Love is a Heavy Word and Bombs Over Broadway. I like Bombs Over Broadway. I know it's not so great lyrically or anything like that, but it's one of the ones where the instrumentation grabs me. If you watch it live, you'll just see a bunch of people singing along to it and stuff like that, and it changes the context. The same with a bunch of these other ones. And Love is a Heavy
What
Word is
about
kind of
gender?
which one?
Over Broadway about gender stuff, like or masculinity or something.
I'm not too sure what it's about.
There was like lyrics like I don't know. It's like you're such a girl. It's true or something.
Let's check out the lyrics here. Thank you, Google. Fucked up, the system falls. Shut up, you're nothing but a whore. I say go, yeah. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Come on, let's go. You're not innocent. Come on, let's go. Yeah. Come on, let's go. You're not innocent. Come on, let's go. Yeah.
Yeah. Lyrically, it's not strong. Don't get me wrong on that. But it's one of those ones where you go like, what is actually a tune that is actually catchy off this album? And I say this one is.
I mean, there's a reason they ported it over three
Mm.
times or two times after the initial thing.
And I think it was one of those tunes that because again, they don't really play too much from their self-titled and debut in shows. They usually play one or two and keep it for their later ones. But Bombs Over Broadway was one that they would usually play.
The original version has like a lot of feedback in the recording, which sucks.
And we also
High pitched
have
beeping.
Love is a Heavy Word, which is the opener for their debut, but near the end for their self-titled. And I think it works well as an opener. Definitely works better than what they've made the opener, but
Yeah, I don't know. Like it was an alright song,
again, they've changed this one to be
but
longer. It's a lot of songs are longer on the
yeah,
self-titled, except
I
for
think I prefer
literally
the
Son
new
of
one.
Sam.
That spacey like hello, hello, hello kind of moment. That's really cool.
Mm.
That's like a new section.
And now, so for the songs that were the same, like the reported over, would you say that there's more that's been improved, or more that was better on the debut?
There's more that was better on the debut.
I'm just looking at it now. I mean, Love is a Heavy Word, I said was better. Jesus Stole My Girlfriend wasn't. Son of Sam, yeah, I'd say that was better. Muscle Junkie wasn't. My Generation was better. Bombs Over Broadway, though, I prefer the new version. And Outsider, yeah, I think it's pretty split here, but Outsider it fit better on a debut.
I think a lot of these songs are so like yes, the sound maybe helps them a bit more, but it's kind of like we talked about like I was talking on Discord about like kind of transferring VHS movies to 4K, where it's like, yeah, you can do that.
But why?
And at a certain point, you're just kind of showing the cheap makeup and all the effects, and
Mm.
they just look really cheap and dumb.
And I definitely agree with that.
Like serving something that you want to have it around, sure, but you got to keep in mind like that's not meant to be like that. It's very much a some of these songs are very much corny debut songs. Like
Mm. Well,
it's not the best work,
what's
and
more
I'm not
interesting as
insulting
well.
them or anything, but
Just yeah, I know. What's more interesting though is the songs of their debut that didn't get a re-release or anything, and they're not available on streaming or anything. You have to find them on YouTube or find the files. The albums, the CDs themselves are really rare. I can't pronounce words correct. So Dumb Machine was this kind of like it literally reminds me of like an indie film, and you're seeing the person wake up in the morning and it starts, and that's the kind of song that would play on it.
I think it'd be like a country song a bit.
Mm. Then
Like it's gonna be like at a square dance or something.
you have Birth of the Teenage, which is this interesting. It's the longest song in Violent Soho's discography. It's
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 like
it's seven
it's like they're
minutes and ten
really
seconds. It's longer than any other song in their discography, which is interesting.
they're attempt at like a really moody, atmospheric kind of Kids of the Black Hole by the Adolescents kind of song.
Yeah, and then it has like this like 1 minute or something breakdown, and it's kind of casual again, something like that. It's interesting, but I'm not too sad
Like
that they didn't re-record it.
either like I get it. I know what they're doing. I kind of appreciate what they're trying to do. I kind of want to know like if they pursued this more, how that sound would have changed them. But like it doesn't do the thing it's supposed to. It's not a good representation of that kind of song. It's kind of just like a no wavy, Sonic Goofy, but like kind of not great.
And the last one, which I would say is probably the best song of their debut, and definitely after hearing it live as well, which they actually played 2 weeks ago, is the closing track "Scrape It," which is a true punk song. And
It reminded me of Waco. It was like kind of the sound that we returned to later.
mm, and it's a whole screaming, loud guitars punk song, and having it straight after Outsider is what I was talking about with the kind of bait and switch that they did at the end of this album, when it starts to get a bit more softer, and then they just start screaming and they do a 3.5 minute punk song, which I'm actually sad that they never re-recorded or even just put on streaming services. It
Had a couple
definitely
like false endings and stuff. It's kind
it
of interesting, structurally.
mm. And if there was any song, because I know we compare like and say if there was any song to put on a Tony Hawk's game or something, "Scrape It" would be the song to put on a Tony Hawk's game.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
And now for the self-titled unique songs. You hated Narrow Rays, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I don't hate it. I don't hate it, but it's nothing new, and it
Very
is.
Foo Fighters meets Smashing Pumpkins, kind of just snarling. There, it's just oh man, that kind of sounds like Billy Corgan, and that sounds like David Grohl stuff, I guess. Doesn't do anything. It's just that it's like why would you put this on the second one when it's a redo basically? This doesn't help you.
Yeah, I'm not too sure either. Here Be
Or scrape it again.
Dragons is the new opening track into this album as well. There's nothing, again, the new tracks in here though. If we talk about the unique tracks just for the base albums, there's more to talk about with the songs that you have on a debut one. Those are some more interesting ones than you have on a self-titled. And
Absolutely.
then go into the extra tracks, in which one of them I'll talk about a bit more. We'll just go with the first one here with Paper Planes. As you described, that is kind of just like Outsider again, but even softer. And
As another string arrangement to it.
mm,
Like they just did it again.
I think it's better than Outsider in the kind of like for fitting on this album.
But
But you
I
should,
just
and
could not.
it is a bonus track, so we're not having that compared to the album here. But I mean, in that case, they should have just replaced Outsider with it.
Absolutely. Or just not do paper plane at all.
Hmm. And then finally, the last bonus track that I put on here, which out of all of these songs is my downright favorite. It was a bonus track only on the Australian version. It's one that I've heard live. They actually played a lot live as well. It's the song Eat Your Parents, which seems to be this whole kind of out of all their songs that have kind of talked about different generations and the change and stuff like that, this is the one that does it the best.
I like this song a lot.
Yeah, this is the one that kind of it talks about religion in there as well, about how the change of just kind of the whole eating your parents is not just like not really following everything that they say kind of thing. It's really kind
Right.
of rebellious, but also talks about it talks about his struggles with religion. I guess this must be something that he had while growing up. It's got good lyrics that are fun to sing along. Like I want my heaven, but heaven's not real.
You know how old they were when they were writing these songs?
They must have been in like 20, like early 20s, like 19s. I think they were like teenagers around this time.
And
I can literally go search that up because it's on the Wikipedia. But yeah, okay. So their debut was released in 2006, consisting of songs written when they were 14. That was their EP.
was on Broadway when they were 14.
Yeah,
Okay. Makes sense.
yeah.
Like, yeah, yeah. Fuck the system. That's all it is.
Plus, out of all the songs to say, it's like if you gotta call it grunge, what is the most genuine? Eat Your Parents definitely is. It's got a riff that is fun. It kind of changes a bit more. I've heard some publications say that this is one of the weakest Violent Soho tracks. I think those people are just fucking wrong.
They're absolutely wrong. It's one of the most standout.
Yeah. Lyrically, it's one of their strongest songs. Tune wise, it's definitely one of their strongest. Even if the ending is literally just It's You at the end, you've got the full angst going on and they just go with it. And it's one of those songs that you just bang your head for the whole 3.5 minutes.
You're a Violent Soho fan, and I'm not really.
I don't know.
But even for me, it's like, yeah, Eat Your Parents is one of the standouts for sure.
Mm, absolutely.
Like, I don't know if I'll go back to it necessarily, but it's like the one I appreciated a lot. And I'm kind of upset that it's a bonus track. Like they really thought cutting that was worth it. I
Yeah,
don't get their process, their thoughts on how to do this.
I mean, this is very early. Who knows? But yeah, I'm surprised as well that this never was officially a part of an album, and it's only a part of the Australian version because it's one of the most standout in their whole discography, and I think you even agree with that.
Like, yeah.
Again,
So
it's
it's
it's not.
frustrating then to kind of do this and like they're similar, but they're not. But it's just filled with all these questions I have about their decision making processes and like how they want to make an album and how that all works. You know, it's a different kind of analysis of an album that we've usually done, and it makes me kind of not like it even more.
Mm, interesting take, but we're gonna have to kind of move on here because we kind of spent around 30 minutes on this. I figured this one was gonna take a while because we're kind of talking about two, but
I,
it's
I would kind of just sound like my thoughts there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll just quickly wrap this up. Trix's opinion. She didn't apparently get too much time to really listen to most, so she doesn't really. None of this really clicked for her. But hopefully she actually properly listens to Eat Your Parents at least. It's a good song. I think it's very interesting kind of comparing the two albums as well with different sounds and what works and what doesn't. And it's one where it's kind of gone a bit 50-50 in how it's worked. And some's worked on the debut, some's worked on the self-titled a lot more. In the end, you haven't really clicked with anything, but we can still really kind of compare the two differences in quality. I'd say my favorite again is obviously Eat Your Parents out of everything, but if we're going to put this down to just the two two bass albums, I would say my favorite is probably Bombs Over Broadway on their self-titled, and my least favorite is Muscle Junkie on their debut.
For me, my favorite's probably Son of Sam, and my least favorite is Outsider.
I'm assuming Outsider is for self-titled version.
For the original,
Oh, original.
for We Don't Belong Here.
And Son of Sam on which version doesn't matter.
No.
Yeah.
And then for the new one, for the self-titled, Son of Sam is again a favorite, and Eat Your Parents is another favorite,
Mm.
and then least favorite is Narrow Ways and Paper Plane.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I mean, kinda because I chose different songs, but I mean, yeah. Anyway, let's move on to something. Please choose for me.
Let's talk about Trix's. No, it's not Trix's. It's my pick.
Yeah, you two.
Against me.
These two did a massive bait and switch here by you choosing the transgender Dysphoria Blues, which Trix Trix has already come out and said is one of her favorite albums, unsurprisingly. And
We
you're the
talked
big
about doing this album a lot.
yeah, and you're the big old Montreal fan, so
I picked Transgender Dysphoria Blues because I kind of felt bad giving Adolescents my top pick, even though they were homophobic and stuff. Little bit.
music. We didn't have the strongest
Bearcore punk and stuff.
albums last week. I mean, even as I said with last week, I love Luca Brasi, but like kind of comparing what's a lot more impressive and stuff, they were kind of 50-50 for me, and White Reaper never clicked.
Fine. I think White Reaper was fine.
But this one, here we go. This one's probably the best album of this week. However, it's not because of how strong it is. I think lyrically, this is the strongest out of everything, without a fucking doubt. But this ain't ain't the most unique punk instrumentation I've ever heard.
It's all really solid though. That's the cool part. It's all, good stuff. It's not amazing, but it's good.
I'm just saying, if the lyrics weren't as good as they were, we would be comparing this more with Violent Sorrow.
Like, I'm a cis person. This album gives you an idea of like what trans people go through, I guess. So
Look,
I mean,
the opening
does a lot
track
for
hooked
that.
me with the lyric that they don't see a girl, they just see a faggot.
And then like
That's
you got
one
no
of the
clenching
few
your strut.
one of the few times that you can hear someone say the word faggot, and it's not just for edginess.
There's a real meaning behind that.
Yeah.
And then I think that opening song kind of sets the tone for everything. It is like the best song on the record, I'm gonna say.
I completely agree.
So strong in setting the tone and the imagery and like the feeling. You kind of vibe with the feeling a bit, even though you don't relate to it. You kind of get it. You get in that like, okay, I understand if that's kind of what they're going through. Okay.
And I think, I mean, you'll probably hear me say a bit more of Montreal in that tune, with the kind of, the opener is so great, but it kind of fizzles out a bit with its sound being a bit too generic for me to kind of fully remember a lot of it.
Yeah,
Now,
I can agree with that.
for someone like Trix, where the lyrics is definitely a lot more personable and relatable, things become a lot more memorable. But obviously, it's like the Janelle Monáe one. Not everything is so relatable and personal to me here, or too much like memorable. So I do forget a lot of this. Without a doubt, this is still a great album, and obviously, this will go down as one of the most historical punk records ever.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, for me, having listened to it enough over the years, like listening to it for this week, like a lot of lyrics stick in my head for sure.
Mm.
And I'll just have, a lot of random times I'll just start thinking about Drinking with the Jocks or Paralytic States or whatever. But like that happens with a lot of albums I like here too. Like it's just, oh yeah, that's a sign of a good album. It's like, man,
I think
the lyrics are really good.
It starts strong lyrically, and whilst the tunes are still somewhat generic and stuff like that, is still kind of fits along well with it, but then it just that middle kind of fizzles out, and then it kind of goes to a strong ending. And it's a very short record, 28 minutes, and you would hope. I was hoping it would be a lot more like full of memorable in that 28 minutes, but it just wasn't, and that's kind of a shame. Maybe if I listen to
That
it more, I kind of pick up a bit more. And I mean, I bought the album online. It's still arrive. I'll listen to a lot of these tunes more because there were some great moments of this record, especially
that's why
especially that opener, the title track,
yeah,
Transgender Dysphoria Blues.
that's why I threw on 500 Years with this as well because I think 500 Years is probably the better closer, to be honest.
I didn't actually
Like I
hear
think it
500 Years. I kind of forgot that we had that on. Not gonna lie. I'm, you know, I
it's
forget
a nice
things.
acoustic track.
Mm.
That's like like it was a
Didn't
B-side, Unconditional Love, in the single,
didn't they do a
but
couple of these tracks acoustically as well?
um
True
500
Trans
Years was
Soul
acoustic
Rebel, I
first.
believe they did acoustic as well.
It was called like True Trans, I think, at the time,
Mm.
something like that. Yeah, I think I would agree with the middle kind of fizzles out. I think Osama bin Laden as Crucified Christ is my least favorite. Just like I get it.
Mm.
Like this is very much we talk about punk being political. Against Me has always been a very political act. They've
Just
always
wait till
been on
someone
the
does
anarchist side of
no
things.
effects in this chat with the war on errorism. That
Jane
was
Grace is very much about anarcho politics.
well,
I get the Osama bin
it was
Laden thing.
very interesting to go through. Like I actually looked at the whole uh kind of history of Laura Jane Grace, going back to when she was Tom Gable up to here. And it talks about how she. I keep getting confused because a lot of the events that I'm going to talk about is when she was a he with Tom Gable. So sorry if I accidentally misgender here. It's not I mean, but it talks about how she was kind of arrested a lot. A lot of her point of views as well seems a bit like kind of one-sided about that she was not doing anything, but I don't know her life story enough to know how true any of that is. Knowing around the time, it probably is quite a bit true. But
And
still, she was arrested
there's
quite a
talk
lot,
of like
and it was kind of very
there's
interesting
talk
to
about like
look.
substance abuse and stuff too.
Mm. It's one of those
A
ones that's
terrible
like
home life.
you have to look at the history, and for most of the early stuff, there seems to be kind of no kind of clues or hints that she has transgender dysphoria. But then as it starts to get into the later noughties and stuff like that, she's kind of started writing it a little bit more secretly in some of
Right?
her
Yeah.
lyrics, and kind of come 2013, this whole 2012 or something, this whole transition starts. She kind of publicly announces it. You get the small stuff. It's kind of really interesting history to kind of look at, especially since you know around this time, around 2013, like there weren't many transgender acts,
Oh,
especially well, probably were a heap of them, but none of them had much popularity. So for a band that had as much kind of recognition and kind of a discography as Against Me did, it's kind of one of the biggest moments in music history.
that's why I started listening to Against Me because I was very intrigued by her coming out and everything. And it's like I never heard of them before, so I was like, oh, I want to check it out and see how it goes. Uh, like I said, it's interesting having that perspective in an
Mm.
album like this. It like it kind of maybe informs certain things about like why a song like Dead Friend might exist or Two Coffins or something like that.
So actually looking into this as well, as I said, as I just referenced NoFX, actually turns out Fat Mike actually did some bass on this album with Unconditional Love and Fuck My Life 666. So that's interesting.
They were going through some problems with their bassist at the time, and like the lineup in general was kind of evolving and shifting.
Mm.
From what I read, this song or this album was like done like twice before. The second time almost completely before they landed on this version. And I'm not sure why, or like why there's so much transition in the lineup. Maybe it was people not being comfortable with the subject material. I really don't know. Hope not, with the punk scene being the way it is, but you don't know.
I
You don't want
mean,
to assume.
there is usually, when it comes to these things, there's usually a lot more issues than it says. Uh, I'm taking a look at this, so this is the Wikipedia thing. It doesn't talk too much about anyone kind of leaving and against me around that time, from what I see.
Between the last album and this one, I guess is more. It was
Yeah,
about 4 years, I want to say.
possibly. I think it's around 4 or 3, and it's yeah, there's not really much talk about it. So in it just says in May 2013, bassist Andrew Sosa announced uh his departure, and I mean, maybe it was differences in the creativity. Maybe they were going for a direction now because of it that other people didn't want to go in, and it's not always a bad thing. It depends
Right.
on what the reason was. It's kind of there's a lot that goes into these things.
I'm looking, and between, let's see, the last album, which was White Crosses.
So as you look, I'm just gonna say Trix's opinion on this album. Obviously, she is quite favorable to this album. No real surprises there. She says Transgender Dysphoria Blues is an incredibly personal and raw album to listen to. Least favorite song is Drinking with the Jocks. Favorite is Paralytic States. And if she's in a bad place, it makes her cry from the raw emotion. Which, I mean, again, this album relates a lot more to her than it does to us too. So that is obviously a lot more of this is clicking with her, and I mean, fair enough. Stuff that does relate to more personal experiences kind of clicks a lot more. So there's no real surprises there.
There's not. What do we always talk about covering it, so I wanted to get it in. And maybe I jumped the gun too quickly and took her thunder, which I apologize if I did. But
Uh, uh, don't worry. Whenever she chooses Doctor Dog, I'm finally picking Architecture in Helsinki. They did their version is better of Hard It Races. The original is always better. Anyway,
that's a episode to look forward to in the future.
I'd say my favorite of this is obviously the title track, the opener. I think it's fantastic lyrically and kind of sets the whole tone perfectly. And it's kind of the best representation of this album as well. And I would agree, least favorite is probably Drinking with the Jocks or a Fuck My Life 666, which didn't really, it's not really too much memorable there. Yeah, but there are some other ones that are more memorable, like Black Me Out, True Trans Soul Rebel, Unconditional Love. There's nothing really bad off here. There's just a couple things that just haven't become memorable for me. Oh,
Yeah.
memorable. Yeah.
For me, like my memories of this album were pretty much Transgender Dysphoria Blues and True Trans Soul Rebel, and everything else after that I really couldn't remember.
Hmm.
So that's why I picked 500 Years, because for me 500 Years is the other good song from this era, or
Hmm.
like this album that's not part of the album but I really really liked.
Hmm.
So it was like that and Transgender Dysphoria Blues are my favorites. But we didn't really talk about 500 Years, so I also like Black Me Out. Osama bin Laden is the Crucified Christ. I think is my least favorite.
Hmm.
Just one I remember the least.
Anything else to say, or shall we move on to Of Montreal?
I'll move on to Montreal. Our third time through.
Yeah. So Disconnected Dots is probably the best opener out of all of these albums. But Satanic Panic
Oh,
really, really, really kind of just gets more boring the more I go into it.
I hear too much of like the mid 2000s, just like computer generated music stuff. And disconnect the dots.
I like it. I actually think it's very fun, very catchy, and despite it being a product of its era, I mean, most of the album is a product of its era.
Sure.
and
It's notable, and
it doesn't hold up as much as other of Montreal albums have.
I think of the three we've done, this is my least favorite.
By far, yes. We've done how many have we done
Loudly,
again?
Sylvian Briar, and Cherry Peel.
No, no, Cherry Pill I enjoy less.
This is like the weird thing of like Satanic Panic was their first was when they signed with Polyvinyl and who they've been with
Mm.
since then. So it's like the first time they really kind of got a major label, like, or, I mean, major Polyvinyl, sure, like an indie label like that, and that's kind of where their success and notoriety really started.
Mm.
Like they were known before, but this is kind of like the bridge between their early stuff and like the sound that they became really known for.
So
So it's kind of a
what I'm upset that we haven't really covered with this as well is that they did a covers EP along with this, the Satanic Panic covers EP, which has covers of songs by the Shins on there with Know Your Onion, which was out of all the Shins songs to cover was a big surprise, but it was fun and I like that EP quite a little bit actually. I think it's very interesting. I don't like it more than the album, but
we
some of
could talk
those
about that. I didn't listen to the EP for this because, like I said,
I
there's
listened to
there's
it a
other
while ago.
tracks.
Yeah, I listened to it a while ago.
There's more tracks too. Like it's not just that EP. This album was re-released with a second like it was released as a double album basically.
Mm.
Tracks like five of those are covers, but there's two more I think that are not.
I'm just gonna go through the Of Montreal discography here, because the next album was Sunlandic Twins, wasn't it?
That is where that's where they get a Wrath Pinned to the Mist or whatever that song is called that became the Outback Steakhouse theme.
Mm. And other songs like So Begins Our Alibi and stuff like that. And from memory, I think I enjoyed Sunlandic Twins a bit more. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is because that's the sound that they went into. Like
Sunlight Twins is like where this evolves into and becomes the thing that people know.
Mm.
There's roots of it here for sure. Like the Census is a really good skeletal lamping prototype. Also have like the weirder stuff on here that's not of their usual thing. Like City Bird is a very different kind of Montreal song.
Mm. I think there's some good tunes off here as well, but I also think that the more that you go into the album, like the further your listening goes, some of them just are kind of boring and completely forgettable, and I end up kind of spacing out a lot and kind of not being able to really listen because there's not really much to listen to. I feel as you go further into it. I think the first half is great, but then there's nothing at the second half that I could tell you how it sounded because I would just keep spacing out. You got good ones like Disconnected Dogs, Lysergic Bliss, and Rapture Rapes the Muses. Like good. Around City Bird it starts to cut off for me.
I mean, I can see that. I think Chrissy Kiss the Corpse is a memorable one, even if it's not my favorite. Like it's kind of I feel like that's more of like a look back at like Cherry Peel, kind of that just like really weird, whimsical kind of storytelling.
Look, I think this is an important moment in Of Montreal's discography because this has really truly changed their sound, and they started going into the sound that they would create some of their best albums with.
Absolutely.
Like I say a lot, I mean, Hissing Fauna and Skeletal Lamping, which kind of are a continuation of the sound later on, are some of the most fantastic albums that you'll ever hear with this type of sound.
And I like False Priest as well, for that matter. But yes.
Yeah, I wasn't too big on False Priest, but I did like the remix that Starfucker did of Coquette Coquette. Or Coquette Coquette, so whatever. And I understand why Trix loves this album as well. There was quite a lot of bass sounds on here as well.
Like there's a lot of weird stuff in it too, like Kevin Barnes being Kevin Barnes, where some of the songs are just kind of what is the one? Sad Love or Eros and Tropic Tundra, where it's all about my friends are happy and they find love. Why can't I find love? Oh my god, these girls feel nothing from me. Oh no. I go into a
Re
park with my parents and I feel jealous
and you
because I see
called
a
Got Yeah
family.
an incel.
My note here says that this is an incelish song. But then you have your magic is working, which is the "Oh I'm in Love" song. It's like the opposite. So it's like, is this where he met his future wife? Was this where he met Nina Grutland? I, I maybe because then the next album goes into like their when they have a daughter and everything.
Yeah.
So it's possible. There's so much in this album. It goes in so many places. I think that's part of maybe why it loses you a bit.
I just
Because it's
want to
interesting
talk
to have kind
about
of like the
the of Montreal kind of album topics: meeting your wife, having a child, going for separations, turning into a black guy to get away from it all, getting back into it, divorce. Hey, check out my new girlfriend. We were in a fucking 60s car.
uh,
Kevin Barnes, no. Oh
he's the
no.
kind of person who just writes down what he feels and then it becomes lyrics.
Sometimes what he feels is just stupid. Oh god. Kevin, no.
I do I do think the interesting thing is City Bird because it does not feel like something they would ever do today. It's kind of like a stripped down acoustic little thing. I feel like Kevin would not be satisfied with that now. He'd have to do something really weird with it. Like have it be like throat singing instead of just like a guitar.
Mm. But, I mean, Trix, what has Trix said about this album? Of Montreal. Favorite is Chrissy Kiss the Corpse. Least favorite, City Bird. That's all she said.
This was her album too.
Yeah.
I did like the kind of the bombast of Vegan and Furs.
I think Trix is always back when we did Lousy with Sylvie and Briar, and me and Trix both started to kind of go more into Old Montreal's discography, which I was like, hey, look at all these cheap CDs on polyvinyl, and now I have them all, and I haven't opened them because I had the digital files with them as well. So I don't know, I got all these Old Montreal CDs now.
It's a weird thing having you two like discover this, and I'm kind of like looking back at it all years later because I was so into this in like late high school, early college, and like kind of just maybe growing up a little bit compared to Kevin Barnes in a way. Just
Hey, I
kind of being
mean,
like, oh, Kevin, no, stop.
artists like Middle East and Big Scary, which are two hits on this podcast, which again, those are ones you two just discovered and kind of started to enjoy, and then I've just kind of been growing up with it.
And like, yeah,
That's a lot of these
but
albums, yeah.
Montreal meant so much to me back then. Like, but like listening to it now, it's like, man, some
How
of this
many
stuff is
times
really
did you
just
cry in a corner in high school and just say Kevin Barnes just gets me?
actually didn't.
You
he was
wasted
still
your
too
time then.
he was still too hetero in that way, I guess. I'm not gonna get a song like Eros and Tropic Tundra. All my friends are in love and they're happy. Why can't I be happy? Oh look, I'm in a park with my parents and I see another family and I'm jealous.
Don't worry, we're gonna see the person I would cry in the corner and say he just gets me next week.
You do
Nice.
that like a couple times already in this show.
Yeah, but a lot more of those have been more jokes than next week is. uh, oh no. Anyway,
Kevin Barnes is the kind of artist who would use rape in a song.
yeah.
It just is there. And like maybe it meant something different back in 2004, but it seems really different now.
Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with using the word rape to describe something because it is supposed to be a more haunting way, and it's a
Like
pretty
considering how
it's a pretty
sexual.
heavy event to kind of talk about. It's not more that he uses the word; it's just the way that he so happily uses the word.
Yes, it's the title is in the song several times. He repeats it over and over.
Yeah, Rachel raps the
Like
muses.
it's like man, this is a different era.
But as I was saying, is as we've kind of more discovered Kevin Barnes' old Montreal discography, we both kind of found our albums that we kind of enjoyed a bit more. Like I was a much bigger fan of Skeletal Lamping, and Trix was a bigger fan of Satanic Panic, which is why she's chosen this.
I was more of the false priest, paralytic stocks kind of person.
I know, we all have our different tastes. What of Montreal album are you? The next BuzzFeed quiz.
Actually, I would love to see that. I will take that.
Oh no, I'm Cherry Pill.
Thing, like we could talk about how Skeletal Lamping is their American Idiot because
15,
it's the same.
$15 says that if you did a BuzzFeed quiz for what of Montreal album are you, you would get the Gay Parade.
I'm gonna look. I'm looking up right now. BuzzFeed quiz.
Come on, BuzzFeed of Montreal. Uh, as you're searching
Nope.
that, I'd say my favorite off this album is Disconnected Dots. I know it's a product of its era, but the whole album is. So I'm just going off what's the best one out of this, and Disconnected Dots is. It's fun. It's one of those ones that actually kind of it's nice and catchy. Actually, not cheesy catchy, just like catchy. And least favorite's probably
There's no
City
quiz.
Bird because that's when I start to kind of just lose interest in the album.
No quiz. I'm so shocked.
Ah,
Make that quiz.
what of Montreal album are you? First question: are you gay or straight or bi?
Something else.
Now,
Something else.
if
That takes you down
if
a
you,
different path.
are you in transitioning or have you already transitioned? Do you love wearing lots of makeup? Are you a black person trapped in a white person's body?
Quentin Tarantino.
I don't think I can say any more questions without it just getting as offensive as Kevin Barnes usually does. Anyway, your favorites and least favorites.
Favorites. Spike the Senses is one I liked a lot. British Tour Diary. Will you come and fetch me? Maybe. It's hard to know. Like I do think Spike the Senses is the best. My British Tour Diary is very different and kind of weird for Montreal, so I like that. Um, Least favorite. You
Ding
disconnect the
ding.
dots for City
Oh,
Bird. Like City Bird isn't bad. I don't want to say City Bird is terrible. I like what they did with it. One of my least favorite ones as well. It's hard to say because like overall this is more of a middling album for me. So like it's decent. I like some of what they do here, but I'm so much more interested in other parts of Montreal that it's like fine.
and with that, we come into the rankings. So, Trix 321, number 3, and I'm saying 321 instead of 4321 because Trix is only given 3. So, number 3, she has put Violent Soho. As she said, she hasn't spent enough time for any of it to click. Number 2, she has put Of Montreal. And unsurprisingly, number 1 for her is Against Me. Mr. Domino, 4321.
On Soho, self-titled. Number 3 is We Don't Belong Here. Number 2 is Of Montreal. Number 1's Against Me.
Number 4 is Violent Soho self-titled. I think we all agree on that. Here we go. Are you ready, Mr. Domino? Number 3 is Of Montreal Satanic Panic. I'm sorry, it does not. It's more forgettable than any of the other albums. It's just that the self-titled for Violent Soho doesn't improve enough of the debut for it to be kind of worth existing, and there's enough that's done bad and still bad of there that puts it in at number 4. Number 3, putting on Desire of Montreal Satanic Panic, because just a lot of that is so forgettable and it drags on. I do like that it gets points for the songs that are great, being a nice sound that kind of builds up and creates a sound that some of the most fantastic albums are have. Number two is Van Soho's
Great
Freedom.
sound. That's
Yeah, well, it's hard to explain the sound or the instrumentation.
number two. I'm sorry.
It's kind of art poppy. Number two is We Don't Belong Here because the garage sound works, and whilst it does have my worst track of the week here, it's still there's still a lot of it that makes me want to go back to it in a full album just because of how interesting it is, and I'm more likely to go back to We Don't Belong Here than I am to Satanic Panic. And then number one, if just for its lyric content alone, is Transgender Dysphoria Blues. It is kind of miles ahead of everything, still, even if I thought the tunes were a bit generic and at times a bit more forgettable. It's, again, the lyric content on it is fucking fantastic. That it
It's the
kind of,
songs don't always stand out. The
yeah,
instrumentation is still solid.
yeah. There's nothing bad off it as well. And that one stands out, and it's by far the best album of the week. I would also
2
say,
weeks in a row.
yeah, and my worst and best track for the whole thing both come from Violent Soho. Worst track is Muscle Junkie off We Don't Belong Here, and best track is Eat Your Parents.
Song I would recommend most is 500 Years because you didn't listen to it much, so go listen to it.
Oof.
Least favorite song overall, probably Outsider.
Yeah, fair
But
enough.
I don't know if I like there's like I don't know if I just like Paper Plane for being the same song again, or if I just like Outsider for being existent at all.
Look, at least you agree that Eat Your Parents is fantastic.
It's great.
That's all I care about.
For Violent Soho, it's one of the best songs.
That's all I care about because out of all the songs in their early stuff, that's the song that I love the most. So that's all I care about. You can hate everything else.
Sure.
Anyway,
That's fine.
next week's albums. Trix has chosen Beach Bunny's debut,
Well,
Homecoming.
we should say it's our next 2020 albums.
Yeah, it's 2020s.
Extravaganza.
That's right. We're doing 2020. It's all new stuff. The debut album from pop rock band Beach Bunny, which I've actually heard, so I can actually talk a bit about it for 5 seconds here. It is 25 minutes of straight up pop rock. I've probably talked about all we're going to say next week.
Oh.
Uh,
Good pick.
I'll do mine because you wanted to keep yours a bit of a surprise here, didn't you?
Actually, that was going to be because I didn't know we were doing 2020s, so I had a different idea back
Okay.
then.
Well,
So I switched it.
as I said, the artist where I'm a bit more serious, and when I say I would cry in a corner and scream, he just gets me. I have chosen Tame Impala with their new album, The Slow Rush.
I figured we were going to get a Tame Impala eventually.
Yeah, well, it's not Tame Impala's best album, but that's just because Lonerism is fantastic, and that will be covered eventually. So we are picking The Slow Rush for next week.
My pick is Canadian pop star Ali X's album, Cape God,
Who?
as a feature by Troye Sivan.
How do you spell that?
X, ALLIEX.
Uh, wait, ALIE.
LLIEX.
Oh, LLIE. What? No, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the wrong one. Is it ALIX?
ALLIE.
Okay. Actual proper alley. And I see it, and oh, it's got a Mitski feature.
So,
Anyway,
there you go.
that is the
You're there for the Mitski.
that is the podcast for the week. I have been Ritalin. You can catch me on my website where you can't actually email me at ritalinforkids@github.io, and I set up my YouTube channel. It will be linked in the description below. Tricks and stuff will also be in there, even though she's not on this album, on this podcast. Anyway,
Dominic, you catch me on Twitter at DACICHOCKI. I write for places like Tilting Windows Studios. We got hacked recently. It was a fun saga. You should follow Dissonant Waves on Twitter at Dissonant Waves. We do post our episodes there, so if you miss one, check it out there. You'll see if you miss anything. It's gonna do it for us. Good night, evening, morning, day.
Yeah, I didn't manage to get here that because I had to shut off my microphone for a bit. Sorry if you hear background chatter in there. That is because, I don't live alone. Anyway, that has been us for the week. We will catch you next time.
Bye.